Hello, everybody. My name is Jack McKenzie, and joining me on the mic, as usual, is the wonderful Chris Whitfield, and now recognized by the United Kingdom as a licensed driver. It's Caitlin Penny commentary. Caitlin, congratulations on passing your driver's test.
Thank you. I'm so hyped. Honestly, I genuinely thought I'd failed it. There was one bit where I kind of panicked. We were stopped at the side of the road and he said to pull away and I had a little panic to myself and I accidentally put it into reverse rather than into first. And I was like, I just fluffed it. But I put it out of gear and I was like, okay, let's just hope that was a minor rather than a major. Let's carry on. And I carried on. And at the end, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you this. And I'm like, I failed, haven't I? And he's like, you passed. And I'm like, what?
Well, why do you open with sorry? That's unbelievable.
He was
The
a real
classic.
tease, honestly. He was teasing me the whole time. He was a laugh, to be honest. He put me at ease. I'm really a yeah. I'm very pleased with my examiner, but oh my God, I thought I'd failed it.
So this is a very important question now. What is going to be your vehicle of choice?
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to dump my Renault Megane because it's literally as old as I am, and it is very much on its last legs. All of the electronics are failing. Basically, everything is falling off it, and it is not going to pass its next MOT. So I will probably have to get a new car. A friend of mine has offered me a Ford Focus, which looks enticing. I'll look into different things, but yeah, don't expect anything fancy.
Well, tell you what then, this is an important assignment for the viewers of the Motorsport Recently Show, which is the name of this show, by the way. Put in the comments below your car choices for Caitlin, and we'll read them out on the next episode of the show. Chris Whitfield, what
Also,
are you mukbanging on this week?
Also, the correct answer is a beige Volvo Estate with a broken back window. Well, I've got my box from the Hut
Ooh.
Hut?
because apparently
not-
nobody out pizzas him. So I figured I'd get this this week and yeah.
This episode of Motorsport Recently was brought to you by Pizza Hut. Nobody
Well, no, it
out
wasn't.
pizzas
No,
the
no,
Hut.
no. It wasn't.
Can
no,
we have
no,
our money
YouTube.
now?
YouTube, no. This is not sponsored. This isn't sponsored content. I'm gonna have to put that in the thing
Can I have
afterwards.
my money
We're not
now?
sponsored. We're not sponsored. No, the only money we get is
Yet.
AdSense. So if you would like to sponsor us, please do write to us.
Can
Okay,
we have our money now?
Goodness me. Okay, well, before we get ourselves taken down from YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, that's not particularly relevant. We have two very important things to get through this week, because you're getting two for the price of one in this episode of the Motorsport Recently Show. You are getting a review show and a preview show, because we're doing our Rolex 24 at Daytona review and our Bathurst 12-hour preview, which is this weekend at the time of recording. So, let's begin with the Rolex 24, and my goodness, it was a banger.
Yeah, it always is, honestly. I'm not sure how much of it I actually caught in the end. Obviously, being a Brit, I had to miss a lot of the nighttime hours. I imagine it was worse for you, Jack, having to wake up at 6 to catch the finish, but whatever. But yeah, honestly, really, really good action all the way through. Quite a lot of green flag running compared to other years. I was very impressed by how clean it was. And it was about, how long was it before we got the first yellow? It was like 90 minutes or so, wasn't it? So I was very impressed, especially by the start of the race. And obviously the reliability of the cars as well gets better year in, year out, so long as it's not a Lamborghini.
That's true, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I feel like we should go through the top three in each class. I'll run through them very quickly for you. So in GTP, the winner of the race outright was the number 7 Porsche Penske Motorsport car, which was driven by Felipe Nasr, Nick Tandy, Lawrence Vantour. Nick Tandy, of course, cementing himself into the history books for that one, and we'll get to that one in a second. In second place in that class, it was the number 60 Meyershank Acura with Curb Agajanian Acura, driven by Tom Blomqvist, Colin Brown, Scott Dixon, Pedersen and Felix Rosenqvist. And in third position in GTP, it was the number 6 Penske Porsche Motorsports car, driven by Matt Campbell, Kevin Estre, and Mathieu Jaminet. In LMP2, which we will definitely get to, it was the number 22 United Autosports USA car that took class honours in that car, driven by James Allen, Paul di Resta, Dan Goldberg, and Rasmus Lend, followed by the 74 Riley of Joss Burden, Felipe Fraga, Felipe Massa, and Gar Robinson. And in third position, it was the 52 PR1 Masters Motorsport car, driven by Matthias Besch, Ben Keating, Benjamin Pedersen, and Rodrigo Sales. GTD Pro was won by the 65 Ford Multimatic Motorsports car, driven by Christopher Mies, Dennis Olsen, Frederick Vervish. It's, of course, been a very big week for Ford, which we'll discuss in a minute. The number 3 Corvette was second placed by Brett Miller Motorsports. Yes, America, says Chris Whitfield. Driven by Antonio Garcia, Daniel Hunkadea, and Alexander Sims. With the 64 Ford Multimatic Motorsports car rounding off the podium, driven by Austin Cindric, Sebastian Priaulx, and Mike Rockenfeller. And finally, it was GTD in first position in that class. It was the number 13 AWA Corvette, driven by Matt Bell, Ori Fidani, Lars Kern, and Marvin Kirchhoffer. In second, it was the number 120 Wright Motorsports Porsche, driven by Adam Adelson, Ayanchin Guven, Tom Sargent, and Elliot Skier. And in third position in that class, it was the number 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, driven by Mattia Drudi, Tom Gamble, Zachary Robichon, and Casper Stevenson. And breathe.
Indeed. I think one noticeable absence from a lot of those results was our class predictions. Because obviously,
that's not really true.
Yeah. Well, sometimes. Okay, so the last episode, obviously, we all made our predictions for ones to look out for and who we personally thought would win in each class. And unfortunately for myself and Jack, we both said that the number 10 Cadillac would be the overall winner. And where were they? Basically nowhere to be seen.
I think they ended up 5th place in GTP by the end of that one. Although, there is a lot more to be said on that front when it comes to LMP2.
Yeah. Okay, well, LMP2 is a tricky one because we initially thought that a different car won to who has actually been given the Rolex. Obviously, there was quite a high-profile disqualification. I have to admit, Jack, I don't have my notes up. I can't remember who got disqualified. But I do know that the number 22 United Autosports won the race, and that was my prediction for LMP2 victory. And it was the only class that I got right. So my predictions nearly sucked, and then the disqualification happened, and suddenly I've got at least 1 point out of 4. So, oh well, I'll take that.
So the car that was disqualified was the Tower Motorsports car. That was, and I think it was disqualified for a worn skid plate.
Ride height infringement caused by the skid plate.
Didn't the skid plate, come off in the last hour or something? It was, I seem to remember it wasn't just something to do with, it wasn't excessive wear, because excessive wear would indicate that they've been running the car low for the whole race. I thought there was, some kind of damage or whatever, and the whole thing had just, come off. That's what I've heard from somebody, but I have to admit, I didn't actually look into this story, and I don't even know what the regulations are when it comes to ride height in sports car racing.
Chris, do you have anything to shed light on that particular matter?
Well, I'm just gonna say it. I always prefer cars to take the checkered flag and actually win, not have it settle 3 days later. But this is pretty much the same penalty that Penske got at Watkins Glen in 2023, except in this case it actually affected someone we actually liked. I mean, what?
We're not biased here at all. We're not. Anyway, sorry. Please continue.
Also, apparently Sebastian Bourdais, if you've read his social media, was none too pleased with this penalty. And also, Um, apparently Tower is going to be appealing,
Might not
as
be
it
over
was a
yet then.
mechanical issue that, as they say, that it was a mechanical issue that caused it. Mind you, they were in that massive 7-car crash with 16 hours to go, so something must have just fallen off in the last hour or something because of the wreck.
So I believe you're referring to the crash that was effectively initiated by the 40 Cadillac.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Louis Delatraz, I think.
Louis Delatraz, that was right, yeah. So that was quite a big one actually. We are jumping around a little bit, but I should actually mention in Chris's case, you almost got a couple of predictions right. I should mention. So in GTP, you said it was going to be the number 93 Maya Shank Acura that won it, but you got the team. You got one of the teams in second place, and in GTD Pro, you guessed the correct manufacturer, just not the right car. But we'll get to that in a second. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here.
That's okay. Chris is busy with his pizza. But anyway.
Prince is busy with his pizza. You could make a Murray Walker reference right now if you wanted to.
And he's spun his pizza around 180 degrees.
Here comes the pasta. It's a pizza, Murray. Oh.
We are, of course, referring to the legendary Murray Walker and Damon Hill Pizza Hut advert. That is absolutely worth a watch on YouTube. I tell you, this is just a Pizza Hut sponsorship stream at this point, but honestly, the advert in itself, I know the adverts are supposed to promote the product. In this case, I think the product promotes the advert because that's what we're really here for.
Yes, but what we're really here for is racing, not pizza. So we should probably get back to actually talking about racing. Obviously you mentioned Porsche Penske Motorsport. They took the victory in GTP, and Nick Tandy cements himself into the history books, having now won every major 24-hour endurance race.
Yeah, he's won Daytona. He's won the Nürburgring 24-hour. Has he won Le Mans then?
Yes, he has won Le Mans.
Fantastic. That's quite a the thing people don't realize, I think, about endurance racing is that as well as being a bit of a lottery at times, you have to be up there to take advantage of other people's mechanical failures and other people's issues. And as well as that, all of those different events we've mentioned are so different. Nürburgring, the track is so long, it's all about knowing where you are on the track and kind of memorizing it and adapting to the different conditions and stuff. Daytona, of course, is pretty much the only roval where you have a 24-hour race, and then obviously Le Mans is a completely different beast with being the most prestigious and being basically a street course. So yeah, it's quite an achievement, and he is the first person ever to do that, as you mentioned.
Chris, do you have anything to say on Nick Tandy's success?
Trying to make a Tandy computer joke, but that would have been too outdated even for me.
It's okay. It's all fine and Tandy.
Oh, there we go. That was good, actually. That was very quick, Caitlin. Well done.
Thank you.
Also, can we talk about AWA?
Jumping to GTD.
I was not... Crikey, it's the Rozzers.
I can hear that.
Yeah, they're in the background. They're coming. You made a reference that was too outdated, and you're going to prison for that.
Go on then,
Crikey,
AWA.
it's the Rozzers. They completely slipped through my radar as far as their result, and honestly, good for them. I believe they're a Canadian team, if I remember correctly.
They could be. But yeah, actually, on that front, Caitlin actually predicted the correct winning manufacturer in GTD, but not the
Porsche,
correct
yeah.
team. No,
Corvette.
It was so you predicted DXDT. to win that.
Yes, and it's very funny actually, because I'm pretty sure in the prediction episode, I was talking about the driver lineups, and I mentioned that I didn't really know Alec Udell, who's one of the drivers in that car. And I found out since then that one of my friends, Case, who is in Bathurst this weekend, funnily enough. Anyway, Case is actually good friends with Alex Udell, and I had no idea. But yeah, so it's, we got 2 points of separation, I guess, and
There you go.
maybe I should have
Proving you were
recognised the name. But yeah, unfortunately, they had an engine failure over the night, and Case was pretty disappointed about that, and Alex was pretty disappointed about that. But I think they were going fairly well before that happened.
A rather spectacular engine.
Yeah, they caught fire, didn't they?
Basically, they if I'm to use a reference from Diddy Kong Racing,
Go
the
on,
way
then.
that the flames shot out, it looked like someone had just pressed the Z button and decided to dispatch the blue, after getting a blue balloon, and the zipper just
All of the
What a
most up-to-date
reference.
references going on today.
I know, it's hilarious. Not the engine failure, but the reference is
Also-
hilarious.
Also, they did drive along with one taillight for most of the night.
I think I noticed that, yeah.
Yeah, no, far out. I wonder if that fooled anyone into thinking that they were racing against a motorcycle. But yes, okay. So
I wonder if the Wallflowers one headlight was playing in the driver's radio frequency while out there.
I
Is
don't
that
even know
another
that
one?
one. Yeah.
Is that another one for the playlist? The music playlist that we
in
talked
fairness,
about last week?
it is a bit of a banger, yeah.
It is one. Okay, so AWA winners in GTD. That was Matt Bell, Ori Fidani, Lars Kern, and Marvin Kirchhofer, winning that one. I do want to go back to I know we're going backwards to forwards class-wise, but I do want to go back to GTP for just a moment, because there's a talking point I want to talk about. Because there is quite a lot to say on BMW in this race, and depending on what class you're looking at, it's a different story. So BMW were what you'll notice is from the GTP podium, despite being very strong for most of the race, BMW are absent from the GTP podium after having probably one of the strongest races for that car that we've seen thus far.
Yeah, BMW. They were right up there, honestly, basically the whole way through. And I can't remember what went wrong in the end, but the last stint just didn't quite fall for them, did it?
It did not. And I believe Chris has something to say on that front.
So what happened was there was contact with the
I remember now. Yes.
with the 021 JG Wentworth Ferrari, which decided to 877 punt now into the, or 877 turn now into the BMW, which dislodged the nose. And it started to do this. It started to shake down the backstretch.
Started to do this, yeah.
And then it started to porpoise. And then on what turned out to be the final restart, the number 6 Porsche decided to brake check him, brake check the BMW going into turn 1 and dislodge the nose even further. Then they had to pit,
Yeah,
which took them out of contention.
That's when I woke up, by the way. I woke up at 5:20 a.m. Australian time, which I don't know what time that would have been in Daytona, but whatever it was about 40 minutes to go, maybe just under an hour to go. And that was the first thing I saw when I woke up at that time in the morning, was basically the BMW being overtaken with its nose flapping up and down. But I'd say, aside from that, obviously BMW, they took the pole position for the Daytona 24, and they were in contention for quite a lot of the race, really up until that last sort of portion, and unfortunately off the podium. But I still think that's a really, really good showing from the M Hybrid V8. It's been a bit of a not troubled run, but it probably hasn't been where it should be performance-wise. But I think Daytona was a bit of a strong showing, even if the results don't necessarily reflect that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a turning point for BMW, to be honest, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, whether or not they can keep up that momentum. I think that if they went so well at Daytona, Le Mans this year could honestly be a shining moment for them. Definitely keep that in mind when you're making your predictions for the Le Mans 24-hour later this year. But yeah, I think they got a little bit unlucky in it all. How could I have forgotten the contact? I'm very sorry that I seem to have I thought that I'd remember more about Daytona than I actually did, but I seem to have just erased the whole thing from my mind in the last week. But yeah, in terms of the actual performance of the BMW, I think it was pretty damn good, and I think that while they didn't get the result that they would have wanted, it is much more competitive than it was before. And I'm thinking of IMSA last year where they were basically on par with the Lamborghini, and yeah, they were definitely above that this time.
They shocked a lot of people, and honestly, good for them. It's just unfortunate that that strategy and unforced errors cost them a good finish, but hey, they've arrived.
Yes, they have. On that note, I think we should also look at what was happening on the BMW front in the GTD Pro class.
Oh, now this I have more opinions about. Okay, so obviously a very iconic image has emerged from the Daytona 24 Hours, which is Tommy Milner expressing his desire to go for first out of the window. Yes. That was,
I'm going for first, says Tommy Milner.
Very good, Chris. That was, of course, after being held up by one of the BMWs in favour of another BMW, which was several laps ahead of it.
Which, by the way, was Augusto Farfus, apparently.
Yes. Was Augusto the driver who was doing the holding up?
He was doing the holding up, which it's
they
not
ended up
on.
Being penalised for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, teams will be teams, team orders will happen, but I do think that more needs to be done to kind of stomp this out, where it's if it's all fair and good saying you can defend like a lion to help your teammate, but if you are several laps down, or even one lap down to the car that you're holding up, that's not on. You're not in the same race as them anymore. It's cheating at that point. It's just cheating. And I think that the penalties we're seeing for things like that aren't harsh enough. I think we've seen that happen before in GT racing, and I think it will probably happen again, in all honesty. I've even seen it happen in sim racing, so I guess they're setting a bad example. And, and that was bad enough, but Kelvin van der Linde punting off the, first of all, hitting that Corvette later on in the race, and then, of course, getting his own punt in retaliation. I think the BMWs were kind of the bad guys of the Daytona 24-hour race, in all honesty. The Daytona GTDs in particular.
It's funny that you mentioned the sim racing comparison there, because I was listening to another one of my favorite podcasts, Off Track with Hinch and Rossi, where they were discussing their thoughts on the 24 hours, and both James Hinchcliffe and Alexander Rossi compared the move to something that would happen in iRacing.
Yeah, very much.
So that's interesting. I think that you make that observation.
Yeah, and of course, normally that's a bit of an insult because, as much as sim racing does try to be realistic, some of the driving standards there is questionable, especially in iRacing. But yeah, I have to admit, Kelvin van der Linde gets on my nerves sometimes. He does seem to think that he can get away with whatever, and he seems to think that no one notices when that happens. He seems to think that you know, he's so clever going under the radar or whatever. But no, like we, what he did with the Corvette when he gave the I can't remember which Corvette it was, but gave it a good old shove. That was very obvious. And yeah, okay, it was clearly the Corvette's fault when he got punted towards the end, but I kind of think he had it coming. You know, I wasn't exactly impressed by the driving standards in the GTD Pro class in particular. The rest of the classes were great. Like I said earlier, we had plenty of great green flag running, but GTD Pro was a bit of a stain on the race, to be honest.
I think personally, to Caitlin's point, that was completely low class driving by like Paul Miller Racing in general. Like you had the 48 who was multiple laps down, essentially playing tail gunner, which is allowed, but not to the point where it escalates like that. It's just it's not on. It's not. That's
No.
not racing. That's not racing. That's just classless.
Yeah, it was fairly poor sportsmanship. I have to say on that front. Although all of the chaos in GTD Pro did rather pave the way for the number 65 Ford Multimatic Motorsports team in what is probably going to be a historic win for Ford at the Daytona 24 Hours and the start of a very big week for Ford in general, because there's been obviously some big news across motorsports involving Ford this week. We could do an episode on it this coming week, but I'll touch briefly on it. Shortly after Ford won the Rolex 24, it was announced that their LMDH program had been confirmed for the FIA WEC. Shortly after that, it was announced that longtime Chevrolet / Holden / General Motors team, Triple Eight Engineering, would be switching back to Ford in the Australian Supercars Championship. And shortly after that, it was announced that Ford would be taking on Pikes Peak. So very big week for the Blue Oval.
Yeah, they're taking on Pikes Peak with the Mach E this time, because last year or the year before was the Super Van. Then last year was the F-150 Lightning, and now it's the Mach E. And let me tell you, first of all, Romain Dumas is staying behind the wheel because, well, who else would you put in there to go up Pikes Peak than Romain Dumas? I mean, the man is just a weapon behind the wheel of
Has
a.
he won it something like 10 times?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Well, he definitely holds the ultimate record at Pikes Peak anyway. I don't know exactly how many times he's won it, but I know he's pretty darn good there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He may be slightly good. Yeah, he may be a little good. Like
Yes.
a few wins there, and they also unveiled the Mach E NASCAR prototype that they basically they've put a Mach E body and electric motor components in a I think it's one of the new NASCAR chassis. It's basically what they've been testing with David Reagan over the past year. The ABB NASCAR EV prototype. But they've put a Ford Mach E body on it.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And also, I actually, like, a couple people on a Discord that I was on. We watched that live. We watched that announcement last night live, and let me tell you, we were all roaring. It was basically like we're stoked for for Ford to come in, and I think I would have to guess that they would be continuing their partnership with Multimatic, because Multimatic, of course, runs the Mustang program, the factory program with Ford, also
and they've
provides.
basically run all of the. They've really run all of the IMSA Ford programs really
And
for
WEC
the
as
last
well.
few years. Yeah,
And the WEC as well with Proton competition as well. I was completely. I think everyone was also blindsided by the fact that Triple Eight's going back to Ford. First time since the Vodafone era, I believe.
yeah. No, it's been a very long time. But yeah, I think Ford could not have chosen a better time to announce all of those things, especially with the win for the Ford Mustang. And I think after the year that car had last year, to come into Daytona and win in the way that they did, 2 cars on the podium, is absolutely fantastic for that organization. So it was quite good to see, actually. Although I should also mention, so while Ford had a very good run in GTD Pro, there was a manufacturer that didn't really have a particularly good run in any of the classes, and unfortunately that was Lamborghini. We said in the preview show that it would be, well, at least I did say in the preview show that would be good if Lamborghini could just get the SC63 through the 24 hours, but unfortunately it lasted something like 36 laps or something like that. I can't remember how many laps it was.
It came last. It did the fewest laps of any car.
It did.
Only Eduardo Mortara even got to drive the thing before it broke down, which is quite a shame considering that all-star lineup. 2 ex-Formula 1 drivers in that car, Daniel Fiat and Romain Grosjean. And I'm sure there would have been plenty of people tuning in specifically to see them racing, and they never even got in the car, never even turned a wheel.
That's true as well. And also, a car that people certainly would have been tuning in to see was the number 9 FAF Motorsports car, and unfortunately that would be an ill-fated effort as well.
Through no fault of their own, because they were one of the 7 cars that were involved in the little carambolage over at Turn 1, and
they were leading GTD at the time.
It was actually
Pro.
Ironically, it was actually a collision that took them out with the Paul Miller number 48. That's why they were multiple laps down late in the going, because they were actually also involved in that schmozzle and or carambolage or whatever other fancy book learning words that I've got to put in place. But it's unfortunate. And also, I want to give a shout out to the Forte Racing team. They actually did a great, they were pretty much there most of the race. The number 78.
Where did they end up finishing?
I don't think they actually wound up finishing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or, hang on. Let me see. We are checking.
I think it's certainly a tough break for Lamborghini. I am a little bit concerned about Lamborghini and sports cars at the moment, particularly after withdrawing from the WEC and sort of scaling back that Lamborghini program. Because they had such a tough year in the first year, both in IMSA and the World Endurance Championship, and to start 2025 off in that way is really quite unfortunate for that team.
Feels like a long time since GRT Grasser got that 1-2 in GTD. That was a couple of years ago now, but I remember how excited everyone was when that happened, and that's in the rearview mirror, I'm afraid.
Yes. Chris, how did Forte end up doing?
We are checking. They were 42nd, and they had a crash on lap 591.
Were they possibly? What lap was the crash that the big crash at turn one that Louis Delatraz spun in?
It was with 16 hours to go. And the leader at the time, the number 4, it was on lap 245.
Okay, so it would have been long before.
It would
then.
have been in the
Okay.
morning.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't want to end on a negative for a manufacturer, so end with a positive for a manufacturer. I should say, fantastic race for Porsche, getting 2 cars on the overall podium. And to be honest, I think I'm going to make a bold prediction now after that one. I think Porsche have won Daytona, and that car's been on the up, and one of the only things that they really haven't won yet is the 24 hours of Le Mans, and I think that's an objective for that car, so I think that this might be Porsche's year.
Plus, they have a third entry that they're going to be doing as well.
Not to mention all the privateers that they've got waiting in the wings to possibly snatch a victory away. So yeah, another brilliant race for the 963. Again, I think, and the 963, when looking back at this era of sports cars years from now, which by the way, we are in a fantastic place in the world of sports cars at the moment, because we're basically gone from a landscape where international prototype racing at the top level was effectively dead, and now it probably, between IMSA and the World Endurance Championship, it's probably the best manufacturer representation of any category aside from maybe GT3. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic win for Porsche, and especially with Ford announcing their entry as well, it's a fantastic time for prototype racing in general.
And not to mention the 2 Genesis that are coming in as well.
They're on the way as well, yes. Good
Both
time.
Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, I believe.
You had to.
You had to.
There must have been some misunderstanding. It must have been some kind of mistake.
We must be in a land of confusion. Carry on.
Yes. And I think
No,
we're in... Okay,
no, that's Kansas.
No, land of confusion with Genesis. Anyway, carry on.
No, I said carry my wayward son. But the thing is,
sorry.
Carry on, my wayward son. Yeah, very good. Okay, I think we should end off our Rolex 24 review, and I want to end with this positive as well. The viewership numbers were fantastic. So on YouTube, obviously, so IMSA within the last couple of years, they've started streaming the races on YouTube. Part 3 of the race has, when I last checked, had 1.2 million views.
Wow.
What a number.
Wasn't the preview our most successful podcast as well?
It was, yeah. No, most successful podcast that we've ever done was the Rolex 24 preview, which is the second episode of the rebooted show. So sports cars, very much in a good place, and that's just the YouTube numbers. That's not including TV or anything.
Yeah, so thank you for that, guys, and let's keep that up. But yeah, clearly, IMSA in particular and the Daytona 24 Hours, hot demand right now.
Mm-hmm.
Should we swap hemispheres and talk about another endurance race that we are now actually going to preview rather than review? So we're moving from motorsport that has happened recently to motorsport that, at the time of recording, hasn't happened yet. And we are, of course, talking about the 2025 Meguiar's Bathurst 12 Hour, which is also the season opener of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. I have some facts and figures for people if you'd like to hear them.
Go for it.
So, for this year, we have 22 cars entered into the Australian Endurance Classic, which, the fact of the matter is, that is the second, and correct me if I'm wrong, and always take any stat that I give with a grain of salt, because it's me doing the stats. It is the second smallest turnout in the history of the race, and the smallest turnout since 2022, which was the first race post-COVID. And this date, I mean, there has obviously been quite, there's been 2 extended breaks from the Bathurst 12 Hour, but that stat extends back to the first race back in 1991, which is a little bit concerning. So last year, this race was won by the number 912 Manthey Racing EMA Motorsport Porsche, which was driven by Hyunjin Guven, who is fresh off the back of a Rolex 24 podium. Matt Campbell, who is also fresh off the back of a Rolex 24 podium, just in a different class. And Lawrence Van Tour rounds off that lineup, and he is fresh off the back of a Rolex 24 victory, actually. But Mercedes and Audi also have the opportunity to equal Mazda this year as the joint most successful manufacturer at the 12-hour, and Jules Gounon has the opportunity to become the most successful driver ever at the 12-hour, as he has won 3 times already.
Well, I think it's a big shame that the entry list is so low this year. And, there's some classes. The Invitational class, for example, only has 1 entry, just a random GT2 KTM running around by itself. I think it's a sign of how this race is going. And I was talking to, I mentioned Case earlier, who's actually at the event this year. And she said to me that one of the reasons she was so intent on going this year, aside from the fact she's in Australia and it was on her bucket list, is that this might be one of the last Bathurst 12 hours, just the way that it's going. One of the reasons appears to be that it's kind of a standalone event. It's not part of any bigger championship or anything, and that means that it's not entirely profitable for teams to race, especially if they don't stand much chance of winning any particular class. And it also doesn't have quite the same number of eyes on it as, say, the Daytona 24 Hours does, which is a shame when it's in a completely different hemisphere, just 1 week after the Daytona 24 Hour. So if a team has the budget to do this race, they might as well go and do that, because it's even bigger. And that's why there are various teams racing there that could very well have been racing here. And yeah, I'm just hoping that there's a resurgence in this race in the future, because I very much love the Bathurst 12-hour. I've actually got the practice stream going alongside this broadcast right now. They've just finished one of the practice sessions, yeah, I'm just hoping that there's a resurgence, because I love this event. I always have done ever since I started watching it, and it would be a real shame to have it go, especially with the shrinking grids as they are now. In fact, I'm very much hoping that we don't have an even further reduced grid, because I've just seen a GT4 McLaren have an accident, so hopefully that's not another car out of the grid before it's even started.
Yeah, no, it is an unfortunate state of affairs. I should mention it is part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, although that is sort of not... Well, yeah, well, yes, but I mean, the Intercontinental GT Challenge is probably not the biggest GT championship in the world. It does have some excellent races in it. It's probably just not the most sort of established championship, so to speak.
Even that's a shadow of its former self, I'm afraid to say.
What I will say is, in my opinion, there should be people sort of climbing over each other to try and get on the grid for this race, but unfortunately that just hasn't happened. In any case, though, I'm assuming the race will still be very entertaining.
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to make that all doom and gloom. Bathurst, like I said, is always one that I look forward to, because it is so difficult. You know, we all know Bathurst. There's basically no margin for error. It is a great event. The Aussies love it. I know people who are there, which is amazing considering I'm on the other side of the world. And, the fact that you're starting at night, there's not many other major endurance races that start at night, in the very early hours of the morning and then race through into the daylight hours. And, I really think that makes it a unique spectacle in and of itself. It's the mountain course. It's Mount Panorama. It's amazing stuff. No matter how many or how few cars are racing on it.
Yeah. So I should say I went to as some of you might know, you might have seen my video on it, but I went to this race 2 years ago, and I'll tell you what, it is so special, especially if you're watching from where I was at McPhillamy Park, watching the cars go by as the sun comes up. It is a very, very special spectacle indeed. Chris, did you have something to say on that front? I think I may have stolen your point.
First of all, I'm still waiting for my hat. I'm still waiting for my sun hat. My Bathurst sun hat. Also, yeah, to Caitlin's point, the thing is, with Bathurst, it's more quality over quantity. As far as, the racing will still be good,
Yeah.
despite the pathetic field size. But this is just typical SRO. It's just a typical SRO problem. But the quality of the racing itself will actually be will more than make up for it. And
Yes.
I'm just hoping for yet another banger. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna make my prediction.
Well, hang on, wait. Hold on to that prediction. We've got some notable entrants to go through before you make that prediction, because I've made a bit of a list of certain talking points that I would like to discuss. Although there will certainly be time for predictions, so don't worry just yet. Shall I get?
Never mind.
You prematurely predicted.
I've done some.
I managed to stop him.
I may have done some premature prediculation.
Oh.
Well, not just yet. Just hold on to that one. We'll have time for it. I'm going to start us off with Class A. This is, of course, the GT3 class. And the first talking point I'd like to mention is Ferrari are finally making a return to the Bathurst 12 Hour for the first time since 2020. And they have brought two cars to this race. In the Pro class, because obviously Class A is separated by driver ranking. So we've got Pro-Am, Silver and Bronze making up Class A. The two Ferraris that we've got the Pro car. This is the number 26 Arise Racing GT Ferrari 296 GT3, which will be driven by a couple of supercars aces to start us off. That will be Will Brown and Chaz Mostert, and Ferrari ace as well will be Daniel Serra joining that lineup. And the Pro-Am sister car, that's the number 36 car, will be driven by Jackson Evans, who's generally a Porsche man, but is behind the wheel of the prancing horse for this race. Alessio Rivera, Brad Schumacher, and Elliott Shute complete the Arise Racing GT Ferrari lineup.
Yeah. And having watched practice, I can tell you that they're actually going pretty darn well. They weren't the absolute fastest overall, but that doesn't matter. It's only practice. They were looking very clean out there, and I have to admit, very nice looking car as well. You can tell when the Ferrari is coming. It's a bit more. There's a bit more white and green on it than I'm used to with a Ferrari. It's not kind of pure scarlet red like you'd see with some other categories. It's got a little bit of yellow on the bonnet as well. But you can still very much tell it's a Ferrari. It's looking very Italian, actually. That's a good way of putting it.
Yes, probably a good thing for an Italian car.
Yeah.
I will say though, so obviously we know the pedigree of the 296. That's very much proven at this point. But I do, while I do think it will be competitive, do either of you think that it may possibly be at a disadvantage due to the lack of data that car has when racing at Bathurst compared to something like a Mercedes or a Porsche or an Audi?
I'm not sure it matters that much. I think GT3s have a pretty solid BOP system. I think the drivers and the teams are all good enough to adapt to the track. I think that also Bathurst has quite a lot of practice. Today's practice sessions are numbered like 5 or 6 or whatever, and they're both an hour long. So they've had 5 or 6 hours of practice before they've even got to the event. I don't think that their lack of running will affect them that much. And also with an endurance race, so much can happen that honestly, by the end of the race, it'll be a minuscule disadvantage.
Chris.
Well, I ain't counting out the Ferraris yet. But it's a solid lineup in the 26 with Will Brown, Chaz Mostert, and Daniel Serra. Of course, Chaz has two wins at Bathurst? Question mark.
Yeah, he's also previously done this race with BMW in the M6. I believe that was with Walkenhorst back in the day. This was
Yeah, it
before
was
COVID.
Valkenhorst, yeah.
Yeah, because he was like an honorary BMW factory driver for a little while, and I believe he's also done this race with Audi previously. He was in the sports bet car the year that I went. That was a Pro-Am car, if I remember correctly, and I believe that car actually won that class. So maybe Chaz Mostert can get an overall victory this year as well. Should we move on?
Yes.
And also the other Ferrari as well, the Pro-Am car. So this is part of the same team, but it's not quite in the same class. That is also a very impressive lineup as well. Although there is another manufacturer returning to the Bathurst 12 Hour this year for the first time in the sort of post-COVID era of the race, and that is, of course, Aston Martin in the silver class with the number 14 Volante Rosso motorsport car driven by Jamie Day, Jalen Robotham and Matteo Villagomez.
Yes, I don't know the drivers so much. The car looks good. It's like, is it a golf liveried car? I noticed it earlier. It's nearly golf liveried if it's not. I'm just gonna get the results of the practice session up so I can tell you how that particular car went. But I mean, yeah, oh, it is like a golf livery. Very nice, very nice. They've got the golf sponsorship on the front and whatever. Okay, so it's the number 14 car that we're looking for. And that car was okay, it was bottom of the silver class, but still, looks good.
Yes, I should mention. So the main driver on this lineup that I'm familiar with is Jalen Robotham, who has been in supercars circles for a very long time. I should mention that the 12 hour is, if you're not really familiar with the 12 hour, if you're in sports car racing and not familiar with this race, I would be quite shocked. This race is renowned for having a mix of international sports car drivers and also sort of supercars regulars and a sort of Australian motorsport regulars on the grid. And the entries that were mentioned so far are no different.
Yeah, it's always good to see a mix of both. There's plenty of international superstar names that people will notice. I'm sure we'll recognize, or sure we'll bring up Valentino Rossi and the likes in due time. But then you have the your local Aussie drivers, your Chaz Mosterts and your Will Browns, and even even lesser known Aussie drivers like Brad Schumacher and Luke Youlden and whatnot. The grid wouldn't feel the same without them. So, and even within some lineups as well, you've got your international pro and then your local drivers, and it makes for quite an intriguing race.
I should mention, Aston Martin have actually never won at the Bathurst 12 Hour before. The closest I would say they ever came was the infamous 2019 race, losing that race effectively with an overtake at Forest Elbow. That was the old V12 Vantage
with
that did
Jake
that
Dennis
race.
at the wheel.
Jake Dennis. So yes, Jake Dennis was driving, and I believe it was Matt Campbell that made that move in the Alabama Motorsport
in the
Porsche.
I remember it
EBM
well.
car.
Yeah. So Aston Martin, since it's a silver car, it's probably not going to be an overall victory for that car. But you never know. Sometimes it could make its way to the front. You just never know. Should we move on to another manufacturer?
I mean, I resisted the urge to make a robot ham joke. So
Well, you've done it now anyway. So we'll on that note, we'll move on to one of the strongest manufacturer contingents in the field, and this is a manufacturer that has had plenty of success at the Bathurst 12 Hour in the past, and that is, of course, Mercedes. In the bronze category, fresh off the back of the Rolex 24, you have Heart of Racing, not driving an Aston Martin like they normally do in other series around the world. They're with Mercedes for this race, and they've partnered up with SPS Automotive Performance, which is a partnership that they have had before. And this car will be driven by Ross Gunn, Ian James, and Zachary Robichon in the bronze category. Also in the bronze category we're seeing a manufacturer switch for Grove Racing in the number 9 car. That will be driven by Brenton Grove, Stephen Grove, and Fabian Schiller. In the silver category, we have the number 47 Tigani Motorsport car driven by James Konduras, Theo Konduras, David Russell, and Luke Yulden. Also fresh off the back of the Rolex 24 at Daytona, in the Pro class, we have the 75 Sun Energy One racing car, driven by Jules Gounon, Kenny Habul, and Lucas Stoltz. Also in the Pro class, we have the 77 car, the Kraft Bamboo car, driven by Lucas Auer, Maximilian Goetz, and Jaden Ojeda. Also in Pro 222 Scott Taylor Motorsports, this will be driven by Craig Lowndes, Thomas Randall, and Cameron Waters. And rounding off the Mercedes contingent will be the 888 Group M racing car of Mauro Engel, Michael Grenier, and Maxime Martin.
Yeah, Mercedes cars, especially GT3s, are always meticulously prepared. And it won't surprise you that in the practice session that has just finished, practice 5 for the Bathurst 12 hours, it was actually Mercedes' first and second overall. Cam Waters set in the fastest lap, and then Lucas Auer, I think, was in the 77 when that car went second. Also, the Grove Racing car was the top bronze-rated car, 4th overall in the lineup. I think that was Fabian Schiller behind the wheel at the time. And yeah, not really a surprise considering how many Mercedes there are out there. There's even a GT4 Mercedes in the mix. Why not?
Yes. As you mentioned, Cameron Waters has gone fastest.
Yeah, believe so. It was the number 222 anyway, and I think Waters was behind the wheel at the time.
Yeah. Cameron Waters, obviously, with he knows how to set a fast lap at Bathurst, let's put it that way. So do most of the drivers on that particular lineup. Craig Lowndes, he's done quite well there in the past. Chris?
If you put Mauro Engel in the Group M car for the shootout, there's your pole sitter. I'm just gonna make that bold statement.
Yes, no, I think Group M have done quite well at Bathurst in the past, and they have been very, very quick.
Mauro Engel is one of the best qualifiers, I think, in GT racing, and well, don't be surprised if you see him on the front row, or at least in the car for the top 10 shootout.
I should.
Oh wait, no, they don't do that anymore, do they?
I'd have to check the qualifying format. I actually don't. Couldn't
they do
tell you
some
off the top
kind
of
of
my head.
SRO thing which instead of getting one lap, you get I think 2 or 3, where you could just set a lap and just. I think Mauro Engel might probably. I think he's probably going to pull out a lap just like he did last couple of years, and well, don't be surprised to see that 888 at the top of the sheet.
I should mention as well. There is another Mercedes that I do really want to actually focus on for a moment, and that is the number 75 car, so the Sun Energy One racing car of Jules Gounon, Kenny Habul, and Lucas Stoltz. So this car, if this car had won last year, I believe they finished second last year.
Yes,
that would have meant that Jules Gounon had won. Let me just tell you how many times in a row it was. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Checking.
We are again. It would have meant that Jules Gounon had won 4 Bathurst 12 hours back to back, which of any Bathurst Enduro no one would ever have done before if he was able to achieve that. But they were, of course, stopped by a car that we'll get to in a minute. And this car was also aiming for 3 back-to-back victories at the Bathurst 12 hour. So I suspect that Sun Energy 1 will be out for blood this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely a contender for the win. Which, if you watched our Daytona 24-hour stream, or at least the prediction stream, the general theme was that basically any car we brought up, we could make a case for winning its class. the same is very much going to be true in Bathurst, especially in the pro category. And yeah, I think Sun Energy won. We that might be our review of the race. Sun Energy won.
Possibly. I mean, and you could also apply that same review to 2022 and 2023 because they were very successful at those races as well. That is, of course, if they win, which we don't know.
Plus, if he wins, Kenny can just back his car into his driveway and then hold it up for another year.
That's very true. Kenny Habul, obviously a Bathurst local, and local to the actual track itself, which I believe we've mentioned a number of times on this show. Okay, shall we move on to the manufacturer that won last year's race?
And who would that be? My memory doesn't go back that far.
What, to last year?
Well, I don't know if I saw it last year.
Okay, to maybe jog your memory, it was Porsche that won the race outright last year. So Matt Campbell and Ayan Guven are set to defend their Bathurst win. However, it will not be with Manthey EMA. Their former team is, however, going to try and defend their Pro-Am title, which they also won in that same year as well, if memory serves me correct, which I believe it was. It was either 23 or 24. I realised they won one of those years. Anyway, so we've got a couple of Porsches that are worth talking about in this class. So in Pro-Am, it's the number 91 Manthey Racing EMA car, and this car will be driven by Lauren Heinrich, Morris Schuring, Sam Shahin, and Yasser Shahin. And the Pro car is the number 911 Absolute Racing car, which will be driven by Matt Campbell, Ayan Guven, as I mentioned, both defending their Bathurst 12-hour victories, and Alessio Picariello finishes off that lineup.
And is Manthey running the Grello livery again?
Well, they didn't in Pro-Am when they last won it in the Pro-Am category, and yes, it was last year that Manthey won it in Pro-Am. That was the number 911 car driven by Harry King, Alessio Picariello, and Yasser Shahin. Alessio Picariello, he is now going to be contesting the Pro category for this year, as I mentioned before. Porsche's definitely one to watch.
They always are. Porsche, their car seems to work very well for Bathurst because not only is it light, not only does it handle well because of obviously where the engine is placed, but they tend to have very good mid-range acceleration, which is what you need when going down a long straight like Conrad or like up towards Griffin's Bend. So Bathurst is very much a Porsche circuit, and if the SRO aren't on top of their game with the BOP, I think that the Porsche could be the car to look out for.
It certainly could. And I think actually, so basically in every single year that I've watched the Bathurst 12-hour, Porsche, there's always been at least one Porsche in contention by the end of the race. So obviously last year they won it. In 2023, it was a fight to the finish with the Manthey car in second at the time. The year before that, memory doesn't serve me correctly, but what I can tell you is that in the 2020 race, they were also in the fight with the Bentley. If the rain had come a little bit earlier, that Porsche could have won that race. In 2019, they obviously won it, and the year before that, Manthey were also in the fight. However, I believe that was the year that the Audis had that crash, which meant that Porsche weren't really able to make good on their potential to win that year. Okay, should we move on to another German manufacturer?
There are more manufacturers? Oh my goodness. You're talking about Audi, I take it.
No, I'm talking about BMW.
Oh no, okay.
Yes.
So the most notable BMW in the field is obviously the number 46. That is probably the one that's going to attract the most viewers, because of course that is the car that contains the legendary Valentino Rossi. Lest we forget, of course, it does of course also contain Chris Wirtz and Raffaele Marcello, very capable peddlers in their own right. But it seems that when we have an absolute star lineup like that, everyone just forgets everyone other than Valentino Rossi. Rossi and Wirtz both got a run in that last practice session. They were only 15th overall, so not particularly high up the order. But even so, they're in the race, and they will still be competitive, and they'll still be there or thereabouts, because of course they are in the pro category. And there is one more BMW as well. Team WRT have both of the BMWs, but the other one is Augusto Farfus, Sheldon van der Linde, and Boo Calvin van der Linde.
Oh, goodness me, no love lost, it would seem. But yes, you are right with the Valentino Rossi thing. So I was there for his first run at the 12-hour in 2023, and we went round the back of the WRT garage. This was also the first year that WRT ran with BMW at the 12-hour in 2023, and the attention on Rossi that year was unbelievable, and I suspect that that attention did not wear off last year, and it certainly won't wear off this year as well. The BMWs have performed reasonably well at the 12-hour in the last couple of years, although they haven't quite managed to secure a victory there just yet. BMW has historically been very successful in the Bathurst 6-hour, but I don't believe. Oh no, they have actually won at the 12-hour before. They would be chasing their first overall victory since 2010. Does anyone have anything more to say on BMW?
No.
Fair enough then. We'll round off Class A with a quick mention. So Lamborghini and Audi both have cars in this race as well. So Lamborghini have one car that they've brought to this race. And Audi, despite the fact that the R8 is no longer in production, that car ended production recently. They've got 3 cars in this race, and they're still relatively competitive these days. The most notable among the Audis, I would say, is probably Brock Feeney's car, which is the number 183 Melbourne Performance Centre Audi. We've really only got 2 classes joined together to make one class, because we really don't have much to say on either Class C or the Invitational class, because there's only 4 cars between those two classes. So the Invitational class has dropped from 7 cars to 1 car this year. Class C has stayed the same, thankfully. So Class C is the GT4 category, in which we have the number 19 Team 19 Mercedes-AMG GT4. These are the defending race winners in this class. The number 24 and the number 24 and the number 25 Method Motorsport McLaren Artura GT4s. And in the Invitational class, it's just the one. It is the number 50 KTM Vantage Racing KTM Crossbow GT2.
Yeah, I always feel a bit sorry for people who turn up to a race and then find out that they're the only car in their class, such as Vantage Team KTM. Because I can never, sure, I get it's fun to, have a pelt around Bathurst for 12 hours, but at the same time, you can't really be competitive when you're not just the only car in your class, you're the only car in your category. There's no other GT2 cars there. So what are they racing for? Who knows, really? But yeah. As for the GT4s, there are of course 3 cars in that category, and 2 cars make a race, so at least they've got that. But I am a little bit worried that we might be down to 2 cars already, because like I said, one of the McLarens had quite a it wasn't a huge crash, but it was substantial in that last session. It was coming up to the top of the hill. Is it McPhillamy Park, the bit with the big sand trap, and hit the wall on the outside going in, broke the suspension, and ended up bedded in the gravel trap on the outside. If they've got spare front right suspension components, then they should be fine for the race. If there is too much damage, there might well be just 2 GT4 cars remaining in this race. I'm just trying to. I hope you don't mind me getting a bit distracted. I'm just trying to find out which of the 2 McLaren Arturas it was. It was the 25, so that would have been one of the 2 Method Motorsport McLaren Artura GT4s, which at the time would have been driven by funny guy with pinkish helmet. I can't remember.
Funny
guy with
pinkish
pinkish helmet.
Fantastic.
I'm trying to
Oh
work
my
it out,
goodness.
but when I'm
Yeah.
where I'm looking on the stream, there's no name to the driver. It would have been uh Buccini, P. Buccini. I don't know his first name, but he was okay. He walked away from it.
That's Paul Buccini.
Paul Buccini.
Paul
He was
Buccini.
okay. He walked away from it, but it does mean that only 2 GT4 cars ended that session in one piece.
Yes. GT4, I mean, okay, so I'm not particularly surprised at the fact that there's only 3 GT4s on the grid, or possibly 2, because that class has never been big at the Bathurst 12 Hour. However, the Invitational class, I will say, is slightly disappointing at how small it actually is, because we've got no marked cars for this year, which have always, for as long as I've been watching it, have been a staple of the race, and I will miss those V8 noises because those cars sound amazing in real life. So really disappointed to not see those cars here. We did have one entered, although it withdrew at the last minute. And Chris, I suspect that you may have something to say on this.
Just typical SRO micromanaging of the field is resulting in very low car counts.
So I actually am interested. Why has SRO had such an impact on the size of those categories?
Because they technically took over the sanction, because making it part of the IGTC, which is one of the concerns I have, because they've now also taken over. I think they've taken over the Nürburgring 24 hours as well, because it's now on the calendar.
Is it
Could
really?
you explain to a simpleton like me why that has led to such small grids?
He likes to meddle. SRO likes to meddle and circumvent the traditional rule set with his own, and, well, they basically drive people away. It's unfortunate, but there's just too many series with GT3 cars.
Well, we know that. So it's not one given thing that, it's just kind of a compilation of things that have led people to be disenfranchised. Okay.
Basically, it's going to be... I think it's probably going to just be a GT3 race within the next couple of years. That's a shame.
I wouldn't put it past that, yeah. And I think also they made a slightly iffy decision, I think, a couple of years ago when they tried to replace the Carrera Cup category with Lamborghini Super Trofeo, despite the fact that Lamborghini Super Trofeo has no presence whatsoever in Australia, and Carrera Cup certainly does.
Yeah, that does seem silly to me.
That was a bit of an iffy decision that they made a couple of years ago. But I still think, while the grid's small, as we mentioned, the quality of the racing should still be very good. Can we move on to some predictions?
Well, I will quickly say on the topic of marked cars, there may be none in the race in the Invitational class, but I did just see a very fun support race, the combined sedans, and a good portion of that field was actually marked cars, including the ultimate race winner and overall podium. They were all marked cars. There was something like 8 marked cars in the race as a whole. Lovely field of cars, everything from Dodge Vipers to Chevrolet Corvettes to marked cars, and even
some XV8 supercars, Commodores and Falcons.
This may come as no surprise to anybody, but I'm a huge fan. I'm not sure if it's still there. Let me know if it is. There should be an Alfa Romeo GT V6 in that race as well, and I'm a big fan of that.
I didn't see the Alfa,
car.
I'm afraid.
I don't think
I didn't
saw
see an Alfa in that race.
Oh well, there was an Alfa GT V6 in that category a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I know that the tube frame the tube frame Ford GT replica thing went into Hell Corner, realized it was going into a corner, and then slid off the road.
Ah, okay, that's not great.
It's that one that had like the massive straight line speed advantage, but looked at a corner and went like, "Oh, not again."
Well, the thing that caught me off guard about today's race was just how much of an advantage the top guy had. I don't know. Do you know Taunton? Who is this Taunton person?
I recognize the name actually.
But yeah, there was a safety car because of a very small shunt for a Lamborghini. I'm surprised it didn't just drive away from it, to be honest. But yeah, there was a safety car due to a very small shunt for a Lamborghini, and they restarted it with about 5 laps to go. And in those 5 laps, Taunton was able to build out an advantage of about 14 seconds in his Mark Ford, and this was over other Mark cars, so it's not like he had a car advantage. He just accelerated away. But yeah, behind him, great stuff. It was like proper door to door wheel banging stuff. One of the Mark cars lost its entire front bodywork and just kept going. Yeah, great stuff.
Great stuff. All right, should we do some predictions for the Bathurst 12 hour?
I have one.
Okay, yes, yes, you have one.
A Sun Energy one.
Oh yes, that was very clever. I think okay, yeah, that's a pretty safe prediction. So that's your prediction for Pro?
I have Sun Energy one prediction.
Yes, you do. That is a fairly sound choice considering their track record here at this race in the last
Please
couple of
tell
years.
me you got my wordplay.
No, I think we all did get your wordplay. Very well done, Chris. Okay, so my prediction for Pro is, and this might be a little bit of a bold one, but I have a really good feeling, and I'm going to look like a genius if I'm right, that the number 26 Arise Racing GT Ferrari is going to win this. That car is being driven by Will Brown, Chaz Mostert, and Daniel Serra, just to remind everybody. And if Ferrari are able to win this race outright, it would be Ferrari's first win since 2017 when Craig Lowndes, Jamie Whincup and Tony Vilander won for Maranello Motorsport. So that is my prediction for Pro.
Which is the first Bathurst 12 hours I remember, 2017, right after the first Daytona 24 hours I remember.
Yes. So I don't think I watched 2017. I watched 2018 was the first one for me.
Ah. No, I remember that race quite well. It was definitely a classic. You see, my trouble with these predictions is that I didn't prepare a prediction because I didn't know we were doing this. But so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to come up with one for every class. But I am probably going to hedge my bet on the 222 Scott Taylor Motorsport Mercedes. They were very, very quick in that practice session just now, and considering I am not a sports car expert and I have not done as much research as I maybe should have done into this, that one practice session is all I've got to go off of. So I'm going for the 222.
That's fair enough. Don't worry, I'm sure there'll be plenty of Formula One episodes to come, and you can show us all up with your encyclopedic knowledge of that series. Chris, do you have a Pro-Am prediction?
Well, I only had one prediction for the entire race.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I can give you the rest of my predictions then, because I probably should have notified you guys that I'm doing this again. Bit rusty on the old podcasting bizzo. Okay, so my prediction for Pro-Am was going to be the number 91 Manthey Racing / EMA Motorsport car. I think that is such a strong entry, and it would be foolish to discount Manthey from winning their particular category. The defending race winners, and I don't think there's any reason why they can't do it again. In silver, I didn't mention this in the notable entrance, but I'm going to mention it now anyway. I think it's going to be the number 93 Wall Racing Lamborghini. This will be driven by Tony D'Alberto, who is a Supercars regular, or has been for a very long time. Adrian Dietz, Grant Denyer, who is both a television host and a previous Bathurst class winner. And that lineup is being rounded off by Brendan Leach. For bronze, I didn't mention this car either in the notable entrance, but I'll give it some limelight here. It is the number 9 Melbourne Performance Centre Audi. This car will be driven by Mark Sini, Dean Fiore, and Lee Holdsworth. My prediction for Class C will be the number 19 Team 19 Motorsport Mercedes, Team 19 Mercedes, driven by Daniel Bilski. Adam Christodoulou, and Mark Griffith. And for Invitational, guess who?
Guess who?
Those are all my predictions.
I'm gonna predict that the Invitational car doesn't finish the race. I don't know.
Oh,
okay.
I mean, it's a KTM, so it probably won't.
I just have a feeling that, I don't know, if something happened to that car, they wouldn't really feel the need to repair it and get it out there again. It's, save the car, we can race it another day where we've
Wait a
actually got
second,
competition.
you can repair a fire?
With water, or if it's an electrical fire, with the foam that comes out of the fire extinguisher. The Motorsport Recently Show brings you fire safety tips. Chris, have you been able to gather together some predictions before we move on to some listener comments?
I think it's going to be between Manti and Sun Energy 1.
Okay.
A rematch.
Another rematch. There we go. That will be the, effectively the third year running for that particular rivalry, because it's come down to those two basically every year since, including 2023. So that's a fairly sound prediction.
Yeah. Just a quick update. Practice 6 has now started, so if you suddenly hear me screech, it's because another car's crashed out. Anyway, carry on.
Fair enough. Well, aside from cars crashing out, I'm sure that regardless of how big the grid is, the Bathurst 12 Hour is set to be a banger for this year. We'll finish off with some listener comments, of which we only have one. That was from Robin Tails Fighter, who is clearing up our Dutch question from last week. And he says, Dutch person here, the voort part of Zandvoort translates to forward. The word voort is usually used in the context of keep going forward, though I have to say the word isn't used much anymore in modern Dutch anymore. So that's that question cleared up. Thank you very much for answering that question. If you have anything that you would like read out on the show, please leave it in the comments below on YouTube, or leave a comment for us on Spotify. And if you could leave a 5-star review if you are listening on Spotify, that would be fantastic, because some more activity over on that platform would be very nice. This has been your Daytona 24-hour review show and your Bathurst 12-hour preview show for this week. My name has been Jack McKenzie, and as always, I've been joined on the microphone by the wonderful Chris Whitfield and Caitlin Penny commentary. Enjoy this weekend's racing, and from us, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Ta-ta.